And good evening. It is great to be with you tonight. We start with the leader of Israel, defiant against global pressure. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejecting calls for a ceasefire, saying the war against Hamas is a battle between, quote, civilization and barbarism. This comes as news of an Israeli hostage now back with her family. You see her here, the one wearing that Marvel T-shirt. She's a soldier, and Israel says they rescued her from the clutches of Hamas as the IDF pushes more troops in and out of Gaza. Israel's intelligence says 239 hostages are in Gaza right now, 33 of them children. But again, they don't know for sure how many of these captives are still alive. It is the cruel reality so many families are living with since their loved ones disappeared in that terrorist attack more than 3 weeks ago. Hamas releasing this new video of Israeli captives today. 3 women, you see them here on camera, one of them speaking, most likely under duress, possibly tortured. In the video, again, she's encouraged possibly by the terrorists. She criticizes the Israeli government. This anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli sentiment is spreading throughout the world. New disturbing video from Dagestan, a Muslim region in Russia. What you're seeing here are mobs of people swarming an airport, believing an airplane had just arrived from Tel Aviv, ready to greet those Jewish passengers, likely with violence. We'll have much more on this video later in the broadcast. Back in Gaza, the Israeli military breaching this region, the northern region up here, with armored bulldozers and tanks, engaging Hamas fighters throughout the weekend and pushing towards Gaza City. And tonight we have another brutal reminder of why Israel declared war with Hamas. Shani Luke, a German-Israeli tattoo artist, kidnapped during the October 7th terror attacks. Early on, you may remember, she became in many ways the face of the victims and the hostages of this horrific incident when videos spread online of her kidnapping and torture. Today, we learned she was beheaded by terrorists in Gaza. Her story, one of 1,400 of Israelis killed by Hamas, and tonight we'll take you to where Israelis at that music festival found shelter, and then those Hamas terrorists threw a grenade inside, turning it into a death trap. The war pressuring Palestinians in the West Bank, day laborers from Gaza stuck with nowhere to go in total limbo. Tonight, we'll take you into one of those camps. And also a powerful report of what it's like to live in Gaza from an aid worker on the ground. Their story of the weekend of relentless airstrikes and a growing humanitarian crisis. So let's get started tonight with NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel, who's going to lead us off tonight.
This evening in Tel Aviv, the families of Israeli hostages were gathered to pressure the government not to forget their loved ones amid the fury to attack Hamas. Eli's daughter, Liri, is a soldier kidnapped from a watchtower at Kibbutz Nahaloz. All of the guards were women. Hamas killed 12 of them and kidnapped 6 or 7. That's Liri in the glasses.
Now I have received a message that the army released 1 girl from Nahal Oz. I hope that is my daughter. I hope. Hello.
Eli checks to see if maybe the rescued soldier is Liri. Not tonight.
It's not my daughter, but she was with Liri together.
So how does that make you feel?
Make me happy. Even it's not my daughter, but it makes me happy.
The rescued hostage is Liri's friend, Private Ori Megidish, captured from the watchtower and freed by Israeli troops carrying out the ground offensive in Gaza last night. Israel says she's doing well mentally and has met with her family. But Hamas has plenty more hostages in Gaza. Israel tonight raising their estimate to 239, including 33 children. And Hamas is taunting Israel with them, releasing a video today of 3 Israeli captives speaking under duress. We met Neta, a friend of the Trupanov family. She's speaking for them because everyone in the family was killed or kidnapped by Hamas.
How do you watch this war and watch all those explosions and not think they might be underground under one of those bombs?
We think about it. And we saw that Lena is alive now. And this is the reason why we want her back now.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu under fire for not taking responsibility for being unprepared for Hamas's surprise attack, says there will be no ceasefire, that Israel must retaliate for the 1,400 Israelis killed.
Just as the United States would not agree to a ceasefire after the bombing of Pearl Harbor or after the terrorist attack of 9/11, Israel will not agree to a cessation of hostilities with Hamas after the horrific attacks of October 7th. This is a time for war.
In Gaza, more than 2 million civilians are suffering because of a war they didn't start, can't escape, and which is escalating by the day. According to the health ministry run by Hamas, more than 8,000 Palestinians have been killed so far. Hospitals have become refugee centers for the newly homeless. They destroyed our house on top of us, this man screams. Israel says there's a safe haven in the south, but it's bombing in southern Gaza too. And the roads to get there aren't safe. Today, an Israeli tank fired on a car traveling on the main highway. Witnesses tell us there were children inside. The Israeli military wouldn't comment about the incident. This war is only 3 weeks old, and it's hard to see much but suffering ahead.
Richard Engel joins us now live tonight near the Israel-Gaza border. Richard, I want to go back to that hostage that was rescued by the Israeli forces. You had an interesting line in your story. You said Israel released no details about the operation. This is sort of interesting because Israel's really been at the forefront of the PR campaign during this war. They've been very open at times about what they're doing. Obviously, they don't want to disclose military tactics. Where do the hostage negotiations stand, and how would this play into any type of negotiations they're having with ongoing rescue missions still happening?
So there's two reasons. They didn't release, it seems, any details because there are still so many hostages inside. They don't want to release how they may have captured her, where, who else may have been with her. Did they receive any leads, any intelligence based on briefs that they've done with her? This happened about 24 hours ago. So it was not that she was freed and then they immediately went public with it. So they had some time to debrief her and clearly are continuing their military operations. We've been seeing them this tonight and been hearing them. As far as the negotiations that are being carried out through Arab mediators, we are told that they're difficult, but that they are certainly ongoing.
Richard, just because you mentioned it and you looked over your shoulder, we see sort of that orange cloud of dust. I don't know what it is. If you could tell our viewers what it is. And I ask you this because, you know, we had all been sort of waiting, the world had been waiting for a ground invasion, if you will. But looking at the pictures of your story and seeing this back half and what's happening in Gaza, it sounds like this relentless sort of bombing along with troop movements in and out of Gaza. Is this what we should expect in this war?
So first of all, we are on the Israeli side of the border, and it seems that this is more of just a fire. There have been troops in this area. There's activity, not necessarily war-related. So this is a war zone, a closed military zone, but this does not seem like it is an impact or a rocket that just exploded here. In terms of the pace of the battle, for now, it does seem like it is a rolling offensive, that we didn't have this blitz of tens of thousands of Israeli troops, many of them reservists, going in all at once. Instead, it was elite troops, some of the best trained troops in Israel going in armored vehicles, punching into Gaza in different locations, many of them in the north. And then each day there has been a steady flow of troops entering the Gaza Strip. So it has been a building campaign. The Israeli military is describing it in phases. The first one was the air campaign. Now there is the ground campaign. What comes next, phase 3, could be a more intense ground campaign, could be street-to-street fighting. It's unclear. But yes, more of a rolling campaign.
Richard Engel for us, leading us off here on Top Story. Richard, you and your team, please stay safe out there. As Israeli forces are launching the new phase of their war on Hamas, tonight we have a rare look from inside Gaza. An aid worker on the ground refusing to leave his work and his home, recording the moments the shelling was at its worst. NBC's Jay Gray has this harrowing view.
There was a total electricity blackout.
Darkness and explosions in the distance were the first signs for Mohammed Shalabi that things were changing in northern Gaza.
This was all coupled with the rumors that the Israelis were about to have a very vast ground invasion. So you can imagine the level of anxiety that the people were living in.
That night, the rumors became reality.
We witnessed the most vicious attacks on the north of Gaza. They were aerial bombardments, naval fire, and border fire altogether. Every once in a while, the sky would turn into an orange color. We weren't sure whether those were targeting residential areas. We weren't sure whether those were targeting the borders. We were just hoping that this bombardment would never reach us.
But hours later, it did.
I was sitting with my kids on the sofa, and suddenly there was a huge explosion. A huge explosion. I've never heard this sound before. My child, my daughter, Misk, she started screaming and panically, hysterically crying. I rushed outside immediately to see what was happening. I opened the door, and I honestly could not see in front of me and could not breathe. My neighborhood was destroyed. One simple rocket, just one rocket, that hit a neighbor's home without warning. At least 10 of my neighbors were killed, including children, and many others were injured, let alone the panic that happened in the children and the women, the fear I saw in the eyes of the people.
The life his family had known, gone.
I'm still safe. My family is all safe. But I'm not sure what's going to happen next.
Food, water, and hope in his village now running dangerously low.
There is nothing, and it becomes even emptier and emptier as the days pass.
Shabale joining human rights workers across the globe calling for an immediate ceasefire and stepped-up deliveries of humanitarian aid. Tom?
Jay Gray for us. We're going to have much more on the Israel-Hamas war later in the broadcast, but we want to turn to a developing story back here at home that's happened tonight, a disturbing discovery at a Colorado amusement park. A man armed with guns, explosives, and a tactical vest found dead there over the weekend. Authorities now investigating what he could have been planning. Tom Costello with more on the mystery.
It happened at the Glenwood Caverns Adventure Park in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, about 40 miles from Aspen. The Garfield County Sheriff says park employees discovered the body of a 20-year-old man in the ladies' restroom as they prepared to open on Saturday. The unidentified man died by suicide, found on the floor dressed in a helmet, black tactical clothing, and body armor with patches and emblems, armed with real and fake semi-automatic rifles and handguns, including ghost guns, loaded magazines, and IEDs or explosives, both real and fake. On the stall door, he'd apparently written, "I am not a killer."
Although he was very highly prepared, very highly weaponized, he chose not to take advantage of any of that, whatever his preparation was. We are, to say the least, extremely lucky that he did not fulfill whatever plan he may have intentioned.
The FBI and a nearby bomb squad searched the park and the suspect's home for any other explosives. Investigators say the suspect had no criminal history.
There was nothing to indicate any type of warning or any type of, concern on the part of family, friends, school, what have you.
The discovery came just hours after a 40-year-old shooter was discovered in Maine Friday night. He's suspected of murdering 18 people at 2 crime scenes before dying by suicide. The sheriff in Colorado says teams have combed the park property and the rides to ensure they're safe as they search for clues about what this suspect's motivations might have been. Tom,
thank you. Now to the latest in that mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine. What we're learning about the threats the gunman made in the weeks leading up to that attack, the warnings before the shooting from his own family about his mental health, and our interview with the man who may have led authorities to discover his body. Kathy Park reports tonight from Maine.
Tonight, growing questions about the mental health of the gunman in Maine's deadliest mass shooting.
There's a strong mental health cloud over this, what happened.
Law enforcement officials telling the Associated Press they stepped up patrols and issued a statewide alert last month after he made threats against an Army Reserve base. A family member also flagged police about his mental state, and authorities say he received care at a mental health facility this summer. Jim Laptowitz lost his son-in-law, Joshua Seal, a beloved ASL instructor.
The part that makes me so upset is how If somebody goes in to buy a gun, they get your license number, they get a lot of information there. How is that screen not blinking red, flashing on and off? Do not sell.
When the gunman's body was found Friday night, police say they recovered 2 firearms and a rifle from his abandoned vehicle. Weapons all purchased legally.
With that section of the trail, I'm very familiar.
Among the hundreds of tips that came in, officials say one lead helped them track down the suspect inside a trailer at a recycling center. While they haven't identified the source of that information, Chris Poole says he called the tip line when he made a possible connection.
I said, I think I know the track or the path that he took. I can almost guarantee you that he'd be in a trailer in one of these overflow lots.
Poole is a former manager at Maine Recycling Corporation and was very familiar with the property.
I mean, we know people, we know law enforcement, and we know how hard they've worked and everything that they've done to, come to the conclusion that they did. So we all play a part, and when I say community, I mean it's everyone.
After days of horror and heartache, Lewiston is focused on healing.
In the face of great difficulty and tragedy, it is the hallmark of Maine people to come together, to love and support one another.
The local bar and bowling alley have become crime scenes, but every day, memorials grow for the 18 victims gunned down Wednesday night.
It's a really great community. It's got so much heart and love and grit.
This weekend, thousands turned out for public vigils, finding comfort in community.
If you cannot come together as human beings, then what do you really have?
And as grieving families prepare to say their final goodbyes, among the 13 injured in this shooting tonight, we've learned at least 3 are still in critical condition. Tom?
Kathy Park with a lot of new reporting for us. Kathy, thank you. Okay, next tonight to the race for president and the new numbers out of Iowa. An NBC News Des Moines Register Mediacom poll showing former President Trump still with a commanding lead you see here at 43%. The other big headline from this poll is Nikki Haley is now tied with Governor Ron DeSantis at 16% for second place, continuing the momentum since her last 2 debate performances. And while these candidates continue to compete in the state, it is Trump who is at the front of the mind for voters in the Hawkeye state. One voter telling the Des Moines Register, quote, if Trump's not running, I would have to look to see what the other candidates stand for. Otherwise, it's Trump all the way. He's my hero. Him and Jesus are my heroes. All right. Tara Palmieri is joining us tonight. She is, of course, the Puck senior political correspondent. Matthew Dowd, NBC News political analyst and former chief strategist for the Bush-Cheney 2004 presidential campaign. And Hogan Gidley, former White House deputy press secretary for the Trump administration. All right, Tara, I'm going to start with you. You've seen these numbers. You've covered these candidates. What do you make of this new poll?
Well, if I was the DeSantis campaign, I'd be really concerned right now because they've been all in on Iowa. They have spent so much of their super PAC money, their campaign money. They're actually running out of money right now, and they're really on a one-state mission, thinking that that will give him momentum into South Carolina and into Super Tuesday, almost pretty much neglecting New Hampshire. And to see Nikki Haley, who's been both really persistent on the ground in both New Hampshire and Iowa, up 10 points and tied with him right now, I would be very concerned. From the people I've spoken to on the ground, she is just running one of the most professional campaigns. She's everywhere. She's everywhere all the time. But I think what is crucially happening is that she's reaching the never Trumpers, the independent voters who just don't want to vote for Trump. And I think Ron DeSantis is getting the people who are like, well, if I can't have Trump, I guess I'll take Ron DeSantis. She's chosen a different lane. She's pivoted to strike at Trump, whereas the others took a while to do that. And she's had really strong debate performances. I think on Wednesday you'll see another one, and that'll just continue to help her rise. Is she anywhere close to Trump? No. But should Ron DeSantis be worried? Yes. Absolutely.
Matt, I want to move over to you now, and I'm going to ask our great director here, Brett Holy, to actually put up the full screen we have of favorability for Ron DeSantis, right? Because I want you to take a look at this. The interesting about this poll is that Ron DeSantis came out #1 in favorability, and yet he's polling at 16%. How do you square that in this poll? How do you explain that as somebody who ran polls for a long time?
Well, it's not unusual because people people can like somebody, but not necessarily choose them over another person that they actually want to be back as president. And that's the case here with Donald Trump. In the case is most of Ron DeSantis's vote, and if you look at who people's second choice are, is for Donald Trump. And so the interesting thing about this, and this is why Nikki Haley's campaign's a little bit odd. So you're saying she's the alternative. If she were to get out of the race, it would actually help an alternative. If Ron DeSantis were to get out of the race, it would help Donald Trump. And I also look at these polls. It's sort of, this is not the Olympics where you get a silver medal for finishing second. And right now, Donald Trump is 27 points ahead. And the last poll, he's actually further ahead than he was in the last poll that was done there. But he was 2 points further ahead in this. And so if they keep battling, this is a second place as Donald Trump puts miles and miles and miles between him and second place. And each other candidate, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, others keep kicking themselves while Donald Trump continues to surge and even more so in the lead. So as of right now, all Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis is doing are fighting over who's going to finish second. And that's meaningless in a presidential race.
Hogan, I want to get you in here now. I want to show a comparison of these poll numbers. We do have this graphic. These are the numbers versus August. And when we put them up on the screen here, we compare the poll now to the poll in August. Donald Trump actually gained a point. When we go to the poll and you see Nikki Haley's come up in the polls as well. But I want to focus on Trump. What do you think President Trump is doing right? And what do you think he could be doing better or maybe lay off of? Because it's sort of incredible that he still maintained this lead and he's had all of these court documents, all these court cases. Everything has come out over the last few weeks, and yet his numbers are still strong.
So many people, though, are concerned more about the policy than they are the personality at this point. Look, what you have in this race is going to be unique. Should Donald Trump become the actual nominee for the GOP, you're going to have two men in Donald Trump and Joe Biden running against each other using their records as president. Donald Trump isn't saying, hey, when I was a governor, I did this. I promise if I get elected, I'll do the same thing. If as a senator, I did this to the state. I promise I'll do this for the country. No, he actually was president of the United States. And so this is way different than anything we've ever seen in the past. The poll numbers are going to go up and down, obviously, with those who aren't Donald Trump in Iowa. I've done this now many times with someone like Mike Huckabee and Rick Santorum, both of whom weren't even registering at this point, surging around Christmas. I mean, at this point in 2016, Ben Carson was ahead of Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump went ahead. Ted Cruz is at 10%, ended up winning the state. A lot of funny things can happen in a caucus state, but understand the difference here, and it is a big one, and that is a former president of the United States is in this race atop the polls, and a lot of folks in the GOP say, wait a minute. He missed out on his second chance to be president in that second term. We think he deserves it. We want him back in place. We don't care what the rest of the field looks like. And that's where it stayed for quite some time, ever since Donald Trump got in this race.
Tara, you mentioned Nikki Haley. You mentioned her good performances at the debate. We have a big debate next week, obviously, hosted by NBC News. We'll be down there in Miami. I do want to play some of her clips because some people have been saying that her ads have been very effective in Iowa. Here's a Nikki Haley ad.
Democrats have shown us a lot of chaos. Chaos on the border, and now we're seeing chaos across the world. But you don't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. We've got to leave the baggage and the negativity. That's not the way you win.
The Biden campaign just released a statement attacking you. Your response?
Look, you should be worried. I would stomp all over Joe Biden.
Nikki Haley, strength, not chaos. SFA Fund Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So, Tara, it puts the whole argument right there, right? She attacks both President Biden and former President Trump. It's succinct. You get the messages. The images are memorable. And some people are crediting these ads.
Yeah, I mean, they're strong, especially with the foreign wars that we're going through right now. And she was the former UN ambassador. She speaks with a lot of fluency on the debate stage at these events, town halls, speeches. She knows what she's talking about. That's pretty clear, whether you agree with her or not. And I think, everyone was sort of pitching themselves as Trump without the baggage, right? But when she gets up on the debate stage, she really does seem to be the most composed out of all of the other candidates who seem like school children just fighting with each other and screaming over each other. I mean, she had moments that some might not like when she smacked down Vivek Ramaswamy, but it also they were memorable moments all the same. So I think, Nikki Haley is trying to show that she has this ability to be Trump without the baggage, but also can take on Joe Biden by winning over independents, women, suburban voters, college-educated, older people. I mean, these are the type of voters that don't want to vote for Donald Trump. I just don't know that there's a big enough universe of them to win a primary election.
Matt, what's your take on Tara there and that sort of analysis on Nikki Haley? Is there a chance, can she surge and actually give Trump a race in Iowa?
The only way she surges is if she starts taking support from Donald Trump. That's the only possible way.
Yeah.
She right now, her gains have all come not from Donald Trump. They've come from Tim Scott or Vivek Ramaswamy or somebody else. None of her gains have come from Donald Trump. Until she takes a bite out of Donald Trump and starts removing supporters to her, it's going to be almost impossible for her to win this race.
Yeah. Hogan, is the former president going to keep ducking debates? He's going to duck the debate next week. Will we see him ever on a debate stage, and does it matter?
Again, at this point, it doesn't matter. I don't know that he has any plan whatsoever to join. And when you're up this big, I don't know as a political consultant, if I were advising him, and I'm not, that it would be in my best interest to tell someone who's up this big to go get on a debate stage, as Tara pointed out, where they're just throwing mud at each other and they act like school children for the most part. So I don't know that it's wise for him to do so politically. But look, Iowa's one of those states where a lot of people rise and fall through the ebbs and flows of the fall and then ultimately up into the winter. Nikki's the latest to take that trend upward. She is kind of the corporatist candidate. A lot of people on the ground I know and I've worked with there for decades tell me she's just seen as someone that the establishment wants to try and go against Trump. And Matthew's absolutely right. I don't know that she gets there if she doesn't have the votes. And right now her sliver of that pie is so small, I don't think it's enough.
All right, Hogan, Matt, Tara, we thank you so much for joining Top Story tonight. We're going to continue this conversation, I know, into the weeks ahead. All right, still ahead here on Top Story tonight, the death kept secret. A Mississippi mother desperately searching for her missing son, only to find he had been fatally struck by a police car 6 months earlier. So did that department cover it up? What we're hearing from the family's lawyers tonight and police. Plus, a shocking discovery inside a Wisconsin Goodwill. What workers found alongside donated items that forced an emergency evacuation. And a consumer health alert, 26 kinds of eye drops recalled. Where they were sold and the dangers they could pose. Stay with us. We're just getting started on this Monday night. We're back now with an NBC News exclusive interview. A mother in Mississippi was searching for her missing son, only to learn he had been struck and killed by a police car, and no one told her for nearly 6 months. She spoke to our Blaine Alexander about her outrage and what she's now demanding.
The last time Betterstein Wade saw her son Dexter, the two had an argument and he left the house. But 3 days later, when her 37-year-old still hadn't come home, she knew something was wrong.
He's never disappeared like that.
He never disappeared like that. He never.
Within 2 weeks, she filed a police report. For months, her calls to police got the same response. No update.
Help me understand what that time was like for you.
That time was horrible. You would lay in your bed. You would think he might have been out there suffering. Somebody might have had him, tortured him. You just want that call to say, Mom, I'm all right. I'm all right. All you want to do is see your child.
Then, in August, nearly 6 months after Dexter went missing, an investigator finally told her Dexter had been hit and killed by an off-duty Jackson police officer while crossing a highway. It had happened less than an hour after he left home that day in March. Then, another bombshell. Dexter had already been buried in an unmarked grave behind the county jail. The only sign, a pole with the number 672.
Dexter, I tried to find you, and I couldn't. I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry you're here.
You saw buzzards circling, and you're talking about a frightening thought. Did they even put him in a wood box? Or did they just put him in a body bag and drop him in the ground?
Jackson police have not responded to NBC's request for comment. According to the coroner's office, an investigator identified Dexter and shared contact information for his mother with police. But she says she never received a call. After NBC News broke this story last week, Jackson's mayor said this.
That at no point have we identified or did any investigation reveal that there was any police misconduct in this process, and that there was any malicious intent.
Do you believe that?
No.
Attorney Ben Crump says they're asking for the DOJ to open a civil rights investigation. They also plan to exhume the body and perform a private autopsy before giving Dexter a proper burial.
And lay some flowers there, and just to know he's in a safe place.
Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay, when we come back, cut off from Gaza, Israel revoking work visas for nearly 20,000 Palestinians in the wake of that brutal Hamas attack. But with the Gaza border still sealed, those workers fleeing to the West Bank with no way to get in touch with their families. The stories of those refugees, next. All right, we're back with Top Stories newsfeed, and we begin with the latest on a deadly shooting in Tampa during Halloween festivities. The 22-year-old suspect, Tyrell Phillips, appearing in court today on second-degree murder charges. He's accused of opening fire on a crowded street early Sunday morning. A 14-year-old boy and 20-year-old man were killed, at least 16 people hurt. Police say the shooting erupted during an argument between two groups, and more arrests are possible. A Goodwill donation prompting an evacuation at a Wisconsin shopping center. A live explosive device and ammunition was found along with donated items at a store outside of Madison. Police evacuating the area while the county bomb squad collected the device. The device was known as a cluster bomblet, a smaller explosive found inside of a cluster bomb that doesn't always detonate on impact. No word yet on who donated that item. Luckily, no one was hurt. And the FDA warning about the risk of infection from eye drops sold at major retailers. The FDA says investigators found unsanitary conditions and bacteria in a manufacturing facility that produces 26 over-the-counter eye drops. The affected products were sold under brands CVS Health, Cardinal Health, Rite Aid, Target's Up and Up, and Velocity Pharma. The FDA says infections could result in vision loss or even blindness, but so far, no cases have been reported. And the historic auto worker strike is set to end after a tentative agreement today with General Motors. United Auto Workers announcing a deal with Ford on Wednesday and a Stellantis deal on Saturday. If these deals are approved by union members, they will be set to receive a 25% pay increase over the next 4 years. All right, we turn back now to our coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, and tonight we have new details on the brutality of the initial Hamas terror attack. But as Israel prepares for the next phase of this war, there are questions about what that looks like. NBC's Raf Sanchez has this report.
Tonight, a chilling reminder of the brutality of Hamas's terror attack. Israel announcing 23-year-old Shani Luke, last seen in this video being carried into Gaza by Hamas terrorists, has been found dead. Israel's president said she was beheaded. Her mom tonight saying, "This is not an act of war, this is just pure terror, cruel and brutal." Shani was one of more than 250 young Israelis murdered by Hamas at the Supernova Music Festival. Many of them tried to escape along Road 232, now referred to in Israel as the Road of Death.
Israeli civilians fleeing from the music festival reached this bomb shelter. They thought they'd be safe here, but Israel's military says a Hamas terrorist threw a grenade inside and it turned into a death trap.
As Israeli forces push deeper into Gaza, their goal is to topple Hamas. Polls before the terror attack showed just a quarter of the Palestinian public supported Hamas. But with thousands of Gazan civilians killed and 1 million more displaced, even Palestinian critics of Hamas warn Israel's military response is creating the conditions for the group's ideology to survive.
Hamas equals people's frustration. If the Palestinian people are more frustrated that means Hamas is more popular.
And a new report that while Palestinian civilians desperately struggle for basic necessities, Hamas is well supplied and refusing to give it away. Arab and Western officials tell the New York Times the group has stockpiled hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel for vehicles and rockets, and enough food, water, and medicine to last for months.
Hamas still believes that they can put up a fight.
Gershon Baskin is an Israeli negotiator who has dealt with Hamas.
Even if Hamas as an organization can be defeated, can its ideology?
The only way we can replace the reality of the horrible life that the people in Gaza and in Palestine have had over the last 75 years is to create a new reality.
And Tom, we're hearing from the leader of Hamas in Gaza for the first time since the start of the war. His name is Yahya Sinwar. I actually met him in Gaza several years ago. He has a brutal reputation, and now he's saying he wants the release of all Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the hostages. Israel says he's their #1 target. Tom.
Raf Sanchez. Raf, thank you for your reporting. As so many try to flee the escalating violence in Gaza, tonight the story of one group desperate to get back in. Day laborers who had their visas to work in Israel revoked after the October 7th terror attack, taking refuge in a makeshift shelter in the West Bank with no way to get in touch with their loved ones inside Gaza and no way to get back across that sealed border. NBC's Hala Gorani explains.
Hundreds of men stranded, sleeping where they can in what was once a sports center. Day laborers from Gaza now stuck in Ramallah in the West Bank, dozens of miles away from home. Mostly construction workers. Rights groups say their permits to be in Israel were suddenly revoked after Hamas's bloody October 7th attacks. With Gaza now sealed off, the men are struggling to communicate with their families. Their wives, children, and parents are now facing displacement and destruction alone.
This is my wife.
We meet Nael at the center.
Where's your family?
Now?
Yeah.
I don't know.
In Gaza?
In Gaza, but I don't know. In Gaza where? I don't know.
Have you been able to talk to them on the phone?
No connection, no information.
Nael says he hasn't heard from his wife and 4 children.
I don't know my family leaving or not leaving. I don't know.
You don't know if they're alive or
I don't
if they're not alive?
Yes, I don't know.
Rights groups say around 18,500 Gazans had permits to work in Israel before the war. Now considered illegal aliens, many have gone missing. Hundreds have ended up here in this Palestinian Authority facility aided by volunteers. There's little left for them to do other than constantly check for news from home. We want to die with our families, our children, this man says. While they're dying in Gaza, we're here eating and drinking. We want to go back. But with communications patchy or non-existent, the lack of information is agonizing. Pictures on their phone are sometimes the only connection to home. Day laborer Fathi proudly shows me a photo of one of his sons graduating.
This is the one who's an engineer.
Yes, engineer.
And he's now in Gaza.
This is number 5 from my sons.
Number 5 of
yes,
9.
Nice.
Where was this?
Islamia University. Now destroy university.
So this is one of the young men. You don't know how he's doing.
I don't know about him anything.
Some have been here almost 3 weeks, drying clothes on sports equipment, sleeping on concrete bleachers, and passing the time any way they can. For some, all that's left to do is pray.
Hala Gorani joins us live from Tel Aviv. Hala, I had these questions here that I had written down for you before I actually saw your report. I had just read your script, but seeing these images, I have to ask you, how are these fathers, how are these men not going crazy being held in that camp? And I understand they can eat and they can drink, but knowing what's going on in Gaza with their families.
I mean, I had the same question, to be honest. I would be absolutely going mad because for 24 hours when we were in that IDP camp, internally displaced camp for Gazan workers, there was a complete communication blackout. Communication was restored in some parts of the Strip after we left, but you know, you had these men holding up their phones with that message, your call can't go through, your call can't go through. They were WhatsApping their family, and they were only getting that one tick and not the double tick, so it was never received. I don't have the answer to that. I think that when you're faced with a situation like that, you just have to take it get through it, survive it, and that's what they were doing. And I think some of them would be free to leave, but this is where they were all kind of, able to at least find shelter, some food brought by volunteers in this disused sports center that is normally run by the Palestinian Authority.
So let me ask you about that, because so our viewers at home who may not know this, there are lots of Palestinians who lived in Gaza, the West Bank, and would work in Israel. Yeah. You were saying they're no longer able to do that. Are the men even able to work, or do they have to sit in that sports center day in, day out?
No, the Gazans are, according to rights groups, not able to work. They are technically, therefore, illegal aliens. Some complain that they've been mistreated by authorities. Others say they weren't paid, and that they have no choice but to essentially find a way to get through every day and wait for either their permits to be given back to them, or to get back to the Gaza Strip. But getting back to the Gaza Strip, as all our viewers know by now, is extremely dangerous. There's no way to do it anyway, even if it's something that they were allowed to do and allowed to travel. As far as the West Bank, there are West Bank residents who still have permits to work in Israel, but the tensions between these two communities are very high, as you can imagine, at this stage, Tom.
Hala Garani, a great story, and also welcome to NBC News. Your reporting has been phenomenal so far. Coming up, a life-saving rescue caught on camera. A farmer falling into a silo and trapped under a pile of grain. You can see him there, just his head. How rescuers finally got him to safety after multiple attempts. Stay with us. All right, we're back now with Top Stories Global Watch and the investigation tonight into a deadly train collision in southern India. Authorities say an incoming passenger train slammed into the back of another train that was stopped. At least 14 people were killed. You see some of the aftermath here. More than 50 have been hurt. Officials believe human error caused this crash. And in Australia, 2 police officers honored for a dramatic rescue of a man who was stuck in a grain silo. Here's the video. It was shared by police in Queensland. It shows the moment the officers rushed to save a farmer who had actually fallen into his silo and was buried under a mountain of grain. Rescuers eventually cutting a hole into the structure and bringing him to safety. The man was treated for a minor leg injury. This weekend, the rescuers were awarded for their life-saving actions. Thanks so much for watching Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.